I hope you all enjoyed your lunch today. I got some good feedback that everybody's enjoyed their roast eggplant or their chicken, as the case may be. At this point in time, I'd like to ask Alan Douglas to introduce our guest speaker. Alan.
Okay, thank you.
Larry.
Hello, I'm Alan. Our speaker today is
Straight out of here.
here. Okay. Our speaker today is Dr. Joseph Marshall. He's an educator and public speaker. He's created Live and the Free Movement, as president of Live and Free Movement Consortium, dedicated to elimination of violence worldwide. I don't know how that happens. He is also a host of Street Shoulders radio show on Camel at 106.1 in San Francisco. Please welcome Dr. Joseph Marshall.
All right. How much time do I have? 10 minutes?
No.
How much time?
Right now, basically, we have 45, 50 minutes, maybe questions and answers after that.
You always got to ask how much time you have, right?
If you go to 45.
See if you go fast or you go slow. Give you the Cliff Notes version or the. Yeah, I got it. Okay, all right. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here and see all of you. I'll tell you a little bit about what I do, and we'll see what happens. So my name is Dr. Joseph E. Marshall Jr. Most people call me Doc, so that's what I go by. I run a youth program headquartered in San Francisco. I work with young men and young women, and it's essentially a violence prevention program. So I'm the stop the violence guy, right? Oh, wow, okay. So violence prevention and education is what I do. Wow, I started the program 36 years ago. I just celebrated our 36th birthday. It's pretty cool. And I love it. It's fun. It brings me joy. And it works. So when you got something that works, keep it up. Exactly. My background is born in, you and I were talking earlier, born in St. Louis, raised in Los Angeles. My parents moved to Los Angeles when I was 8. Went to elementary and high school down there. He's a Catholic Jesuit boy. I'm a Catholic Jesuit boy, I found out. And came up to the University of San Francisco, where I graduated and got a master's in education and a doctorate in psychology. Was going to go to law school, but this is not a secret, so it's okay. I missed the law school exam because I was out partying the night before. And I got back to school, and I was sort of notorious on the campus. I was the campus rebel, radical. I led the student protests on campus. And so they all know who I was. And when I got there, the dean of the School of Education said, I don't know how he knew I missed the law school exam, but he knew. And he says, why don't you get in, we're starting a new credential program. Why don't you get in there, you become a teacher, and then you can go to law school anytime you want to go. I said, okay, that sounds pretty good. I don't know, when you become a teacher, you usually do a 5th year of school. And, they put you in a school, you get a master teacher, and you teach one class. Well, they fast-tracked me. I went to school over the summer for like 2 months. And then they put me into the school with no master teacher, and they gave me 3 classes. And it was a high school. And I was 22 years old, and the kids were 17. So I remember the first day I went into this high school, and I walked in and I said, I'm the new teacher. And I went into the teacher's lounge and they kicked me out because they said, yeah, that's right. That's exactly what they said. I said, no, I'm a teacher. They said, no, you're a student. Well, eventually they let me be a student. And so it was, I remember that first year of teaching clear as a bell. It was 19, for those of you who want dates. It was actually 1969 was the year I went in there with those high school kids, and I fell in love. Never went to law school, loved teaching, and those kids are now pretty old. And they still call me Mr. Marshall, which is something, right? Because I guess that's the role I played in their life. That first year was pretty tough, not for me, but I think I scared the principal and all the administrators because there was a lot of activism and they figured out I was behind it. And so they got rid of me. They farmed me out. And I ended up at a school it was sort of the last stop for those young people who were having problems in school. They went to every other school, and then they kept getting kicked out, and they sent them to this center. It's called a Guidance Service Center. It wasn't even in a school, it was in a YMCA building. And they sent all these kids here, and it was the last stop before sending them to juvenile hall. And I had every kind of kid, and I'm still, 23, 24, 25 years old. Every single kind of kid, and I had arsonists and dope dealers and pimps, and these were like they were like 14, 15-year-old kids. And so I'm working with these kids, and I said, I'm thinking to myself, is this just a phase you're going through, or is this permanent? Are you going to be like this the rest of your life? And that's really what led me to go into psychology and find out about, child development, adolescent development. And after I got my PhD and paid all that money, which I have since paid off, thank God, without buying the student loan, I did it myself. I have to say that I learned very little about the kids I work with with that degree. I then moved on to teaching. My real job, and this is my job for 18 years, was teaching middle school math. I loved it. I always tell people if they want a real job, go teach middle school kids math and see if they come back the next day. And then I ended up being an assistant principal in San Francisco for like 5 or 6 years, and then I ended up retiring and continuing to work with the nonprofit I do. I had a nickname. The kids used to call me Mean Mr. Marshall because I was we use the term old school, very strict, very demanding, a lot of homework, all the things you thought kids would hate. Literally, you probably wouldn't have liked me as a teacher. If you didn't do the work when you were in my class, I would keep you after school. I would call your parents and say, Charles didn't do the work, so I'm keeping him after school, and the parents say, great. Keep him after school. And what the kids never understood is that I'd have to stay after school. They never look at my sacrifice. They just look at the fact that they had to stay after school. Well, pretty soon they figured, this man's crazy. He's going to keep me after school. I'm doing the work. I would literally visit your home and find you if you didn't come to school. Oh yeah, I did. I would go to your home, and this is in the, oh wow. This is in inner city San Francisco. You know the images of the inner city kids, these tough, hardened kids. And I would go knock on the door and say, you aren't here today? Oh, Mr. Marshall, whatever. So I really did think they would hate my guts. But they didn't. They loved me. They couldn't those kids could not get enough. The principal, kids used to get kicked out of other people's classes to come to my class. In fact, the principal, at some point, I told the principal, there's too many, I don't have enough chairs in here, right? You got to stop sending the kids. And because I was so demanding and I remember teaching an algebra class in the 7th grade. I gave, now this is interesting. They accused me of giving too many A's and B's. Because in their mind, there's a bell curve. Some kids get, here, some kids are here, some are here. And you say, how can all these kids get A's and B's? So I actually kept all their papers to show the 95s and the 90s and so forth. And I said, well, every kid can learn. And if I'm a good teacher, every kid's gonna learn. And so, that's the way it was with me. The kids did great. They ended up loving math. And when they graduated from middle school and went to high school, I just knew, I was going to get an invitation, certainly to the high school graduation. And if the kids wanted to go to college like I did, I get an invitation to college. Well, it didn't turn out that way. I began to get horror stories about my young people. Girls got pregnant. Guys end up selling drugs, using drugs. And the worst thing of all was I ended up going to the funerals of my former students who were involved in drug or gang-related violence. And unbeknownst to me at the time, because this was 1987, right, that I started the program, it was right in the middle of the crack cocaine era. And a lot of my kids were getting involved in the nefarious drug business. And so I said, whoa, this isn't working. I realized that being a good teacher wasn't enough. Them being with me 155 days a year, 50 minutes a day wasn't enough. And so I said, I got to keep you guys close to me. You seem to do well when you're around me, but when you got out there, I started this club. There was a gentleman who I knew had a similar organization in Vallejo, California, and he said, go ahead and do it. There was going to be one big difference in this club. It was going to be, I get this now, no sports, no field trips, nothing like that, because you could get that at the Boys and Girls Club. You could get it at the YMCA. What I want is for you to tell me everything that you didn't tell me in math class. What's going on in your home? What's going on in your neighborhood? What are the things that are short-circuiting the bright promise that you showed me in class, right? And it sounded so square, I didn't think they were going to do it. I remember writing a card and sending it to my current students, former students. They brought their friends, and we met in the neighborhood house in San Francisco. February 26th. You know what's fascinating? Sometimes I started that club in Black History Month. I didn't even know it. That was pretty cool, huh? I didn't know, but that's what it was. And I said, this is what we're going to do. And I said, you want to do it? And they said, yeah. So they came back the next week. The first video we showed that night, and this was no sports, nothing like that. These is right from the beginning. We defied the narrative that so many people have of these young people. And we sat down and we watched this documentary called The Vanishing Black Family by Bill Moyers. I don't know if you remember Bill Moyers, right? And we had this serious discussion. So we've been that way ever since. We've added things, but at the heart of what we do is have serious discussions with young people about the things that short circuit their opportunity and their good intention. Now, here's where it gets a little sticky. Oh, by the way, it was only going to be for boys. But I had a girl in my 7th grade class. She came up there and she said, my male friends are there. Mr. Marshall, I'm not leaving. Well, okay, Siobhan, fine. I know how you are because I had you in class, right? So, okay, let's do it for boys and girls. And there's nothing wrong with single-sex organizations. They're great, all girls, all boys. But for me, I have 5 sisters and 3 brothers. I have a son and 2 daughters. We're a family. And it's been great having the entire family there. It really worked out. I think that maybe that was an early decision that I made that was great to have both young women in the organization, and the family has really worked out. A month later, the kids came back and they kept coming. They're like, There's no sports here. There's no recreation here. What is this? I had these T-shirts, and the T-shirt said, "Stop the drugs, stop the violence on the front." No, it said, "I don't do drugs on the front, and stop the violence on the back." And I said, "Will you wear these T-shirts?" And they said, "Yeah." And I thought that was pretty courageous because they went right back into the neighborhoods they lived in, and everybody was using violence, and everybody was using drugs. So I thought it was pretty courageous of them to dare to be different. So I said, "Look, I'm really impressed by all of you. I want to do something for you." They said, "What?" "When you graduate from high school," now I don't do jobs. I'm not going to do jobs because I can't control the economy, right? "But if you want to go to college, you pick your college and I'll find the money." And that was a dumb thing to say because I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. I'm a teacher. Hell, teachers don't make no money, right? I had no money, no money. But I had a grandmother. I don't know if you had any grandmother. I had a very religious grandmother, and she believed in faith, and faith can move mountains. So she instilled this faith in me, and we have a couple of sayings in the organization, and one is, if you do good things come to you, and if you're willing to do right, people are willing to help you. So I stepped out there on faith and told these kids, "All right, you stick with this. When you're ready to go to school, we're going to make it happen." And then a year later, it was time for them to go to school. I had no money. And then the first miracle happened. This woman in Marin County saw me on television talking about this program. And she told me to come up there and see her. And I walked in and she said, "You're Mr. Marshall?" I was Mr. Marshall. And she said, "I like what you're doing. I like what you're doing. Here's a check for $10,000. So she gave me a check. And that's how I sent my first group of kids. I actually sent them on a college tour of historical black colleges. They went down south, visited Morehouse and Clark and Spelman and Grambling and Howard. And then they went off to school. And they were so poorly trained because they had waited until the 12th grade to try to get their lives together. That only one school would take them. A school called Morris Brown in Atlanta. They took all my boys, and that same girl, who was a great athlete, a basketball player, she got accepted on a basketball scholarship to Delaware State University. When they came home for Christmas time, and we had our Christmas meeting, our holiday meeting, the community said, "Damn, he really sent you to college." It was unbelievable. I remember that first meeting like crazy, and they were coming back, and their eyes were just lit up. My first college graduate was in 1993, a young woman from San Francisco State named Cassandra Brown. I taught her brother in middle school. My first male college graduate was a young man named Joseph Thomas. He was from Morris Brown, and he was the one that made the papers. We have a saying, from the jailhouse to the schoolhouse. He was a kid good kid, but got involved in drug trafficking. And he joined the club, and when his story made the papers, so they couldn't believe that this kid who was a drug dealer was now a college graduate. So then we kind of got good at it, kind of like I can say American cars now. Before you couldn't say American cars. They've gotten so much better, right? I used to say a Japanese car line, but I can say American car line, right? We got good at it, and they just started rolling off the assembly line. They'd come, they work, you get the money, I'd find the money, and this year, nice figure, I might have 7 more college graduates, and it'll be 269 college graduates that we've been able to make. Yeah. They come and, let me say, we don't give money away. You have to earn everything. You know how you have some programs that you can apply for the scholarship money up front? No. You don't get, to run the gauntlet to get our money is, in fact, there was a joke. If you can survive the program that we have, you're going to be on the dean's list the first semester. And that's true. They actually make the dean's list. And I've had kids at American University, UCLA, Cal Berkeley, you name it. They just get to pick the school. So it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot along. I got 50 kids right now that I'm paying for. And I got a bunch of kids waiting for me tonight because they're the next group. Yeah, it's, I've learned a lot along the way about young people. And for me, since I've been in the youth business, well, since 1970, 1990, I've seen things, eras change, but not change. So maybe I'll tell you what I've seen in young people that are the issues that really trouble them. Right now, they're in a particularly troubled state, different than the kids I had before. Sometimes people ask me, what do you do that's different? And I never really thought about it until somebody asked me, what do you do? Because there's a lot of scholarship programs, opportunity programs for young people. Most programs are like ours are what I call opportunity and good intention. Everybody wants to give a kid an opportunity. Everybody. Whether you want to give them a job, you want to give them an internship, you want to do that. Mine was school. If you're willing to change your lifestyle or not get into that lifestyle in the first place, if you're willing to swear out violence, basically, this is my reward. I had this young man who was in a gang. He got out. He came to me and he said, Dr. Marshall, I'm ready. And it was pretty courageous because they threatened his life, but he said, okay, I'm out. And I said, well, I don't do jobs. And I'll give you an employment agency. No, I want to go to school. I always want to go to school. The reason I turned to the gang in the first place is because my high school counselor told me I wasn't college material. So I was so discouraged, it killed my spirit. I got in the gang. I said, well, if you want to go to school, I'm here. But, you've been gang banging for a few years. I got to get you ready. Study skills, all of that. And these kids are smart. They can pick up 3 years and, they boom, boom, we got them ready. And I remember he came up, I wrote him out a check for $5,000. And he sat in front of the family. We call it a family, the family. I'm going to do good for you, the family. I'm going to do good for you, Dr. Marshall. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'm going to do good for myself. And I said, well, good luck. Drove him to the airport because his family didn't. So I drove him to the airport, put him on a plane, sent him to a college, and he sold drugs on the college campus. Okay. That was the big turning point because I'd given him his opportunity. And he really had the good intention to succeed. He really, really did. How many times have you seen, you've heard a guy go to juvenile hall for the first time and he says, I'm never coming back. I hate this place. I miss my friends. I miss the girls. I miss everything. I'm never coming back. And he gets out and he goes back. And he goes back. And he goes back. And he goes back. And every time he says, I just want an opportunity. So what I learned was opportunity and good intention is not enough. That was it. So here's what I had done, and I realized what I had done. I had given his opportunity, and he really had the good intention to succeed for himself and for everybody. But what I had done in my, zeal is that I had changed his location, but I hadn't changed him. Does that make sense? I had changed his location, but I hadn't changed him inside in the way he thought. And his big thing was money. So he got out there and he ran out of money. He went back to doing what he knew best. So he didn't even know this was a big deal to him. He couldn't articulate that. Oh, and he came back, and it was the truth. They brought the kid back in handcuffs, put him in front of me. And I said, what happened? I gave you this. Because see, you give me a scholarship to college, I'm not blowing it, all right? And so he looked at me and he said, well, you shouldn't have sent me. I wasn't ready. I said, all right, okay. So I vowed at that moment never to give a young person a dime if I could not purge from their system those things that short-circuit opportunity and good intention. That make sense? Purge from their system. If money is a thing for you, I've got to get you to understand that people are more important than material values. Because for him, money was the thing. He didn't care about the people, which I could say about a whole lot of things, right? So I now know what gets in the way of them being successful. I know what it is. If there's issues for you around your childhood, around your whatever it is, I know what it is. Our whole curriculum is built around dealing with those things that short-circuit opportunity and get attention. So the minute they meet us, we go straight to it. And since then, I have a graduation rate of about 90% from school. And I know that's high because even though I had my rough times at USF, somehow I ended up being their favorite son. I ended up being on the board of trustees at the school. And so I found out a lot about graduation rates. The USF, which is a great school, is 55, 60%. So 90% is pretty good. The only reason young people don't graduate now is because they just decide they don't want to go to school. But it's not because we have a phrase, caught up. Not because they get caught up. Because everything that they left at home is at school. Everything, believe me, guns, drugs, everything is at school. So that's what makes us different. We know those things that get in the way, and we work with the young people to remove those things, even if they don't know if those things get in the way. That led to some other things. People, look at the amazing success you have. How do you do it? Well, we have a methodology, which we have since labeled a prescription, right? I like prescriptions because everybody understands medicine. You go to the pharmacy, you get the prescription. You're either preventing yourself getting sick, you're intervening when you start to get sick, or you are doing some rehabilitation work, right? So people wanted to learn the prescription. That has led to some stuff I never could have imagined. Schools have invited me in to teach the teachers the prescription, to work with the kids, more on schools later. But probably the biggest thing is that adults in other cities, literally around the world, they don't want their kids getting in trouble. They don't want their kids going to jail. They don't want their kids getting tempted. Or they have kids who are already involved and they want to get them out and keep them out of that lifestyle. So they started coming to me to learn the prescription. It's amazing. There's a gentleman who I wrote a book, in the book. He read the book. He traveled from Cape Town, South Africa, to say, what is it that you know? Because I got kids, Cape Town's a big mess, gangs all over the place. And he took this prescription and he is using it in Cape Town, South Africa. Now this is really crazy. I got a letter from the State Department. It's scary to get a letter from the State Department. I said, what the hell did I do, right? I paid my taxes. Can't be that. That would be the IRS. Oh, maybe they remember when I was a student activist at school and they tapped my phone. I don't know what was going on. And it says, Dear Dr. Marshall, we would like to invite you to travel to Nigeria to speak with young people in Nigeria. Yeah, that's what I did. See his mouth. I went, what the? I couldn't believe it. So the State Department took me to Nigeria. I'm in Abuja, speaking on Martin Luther King's birthday, and they took me to Lagos, and I'm talking to all these kids. Now I'll tell you, you might not believe this. Kids over the world are the same. Don't think they aren't. I don't care. I've been in enough places to know kids all over the world have the same issues. The same issues. And so I'm talking to all these kids in Nigeria. Since that first one, the State Department has taken me to Nigeria, I said that, Botswana, South Africa, Haiti. Haiti was the toughest place. Oh my God. It was really, because it's so poor. And you know what's going on in Haiti now. It's in total disarray. They took me to Canada, Montreal, and Toronto. God, Toronto's a great city. And it's something I learned on that trip. I didn't know there was a fourth time zone because they took me to Halifax. And I didn't know there was a four time. I don't know if you know, it's so far out there. And somebody told me there's actually a fifth time zone. I didn't see, you learn all kind of things. So now I'm on the State Department speaker list. COVID kind of shut that down. And so yeah, all kinds of things happen. I started just teaching and training people. It's like my medical school. And the information that I have about how to prevent violence, sometimes I call myself the doctor of the disease of violence. Call it a disease, which I can explain why. And so just getting this information to other people has been, that's probably the greatest thing that I do. This prescription, this alive and free prescription. So I don't say stop the violence. I want kids to aspire to something, and I want them to aspire to staying alive, unharmed by violence, and free from incarceration. Now, one person can do a lot of damage. One person can do a lot of good. I think you've seen with all these school shootings, the latest one in Tennessee, right? That one person can mess it up for everybody. So it's really been fun getting this information out to people, and going to Seattle, Washington, which is a big alive and free program up there, and walking into it and sitting down with kids and them telling me exactly what I teach to young people in San Francisco or in Oakland or in Richmond. And I didn't teach them. That is a joy to be able to, yeah. Then I got another break. I got on the radio. I've been a radio talk host on KMEL for a long time. I don't even know how to do it because KMEL is a music station. And I have this talk show on a music station. And I'm sort of Dr. Phil of the hood, okay? And all these people call me and tell me, and we talk about anything on the radio. If it has to do with life, has to do with violence, we talk about it. Gangs, drugs, domestic violence, oh God. There's women call me and tell me what's going on in their homes with men. So you can either get this information from me up close and personal, sort of like I'm doing with you, or you can get me every Sunday on a radio show. Or you can read the book, read the documentary, or I can teach it to somebody and they can teach you. And let me tell you in my opinion why violence is so hard to stop. And then you tell me it makes sense to you. Violence is difficult to stop because people believe that it's in man's nature. I've heard that. I've heard people say it's in man's nature to be violent. The second reason it's hard to stop is that people believe violence is necessary. Oh no, people believe violence is necessary. And now I'm starting with people, then I'm going to extract it to nations and countries. Because it's the same stuff. And then the other reason violence is so hard to stop is it's profitable. Violence makes money for people. I'm going to give you two examples. They now have for-profit prisons. Did you know that? Yeah. Well, you got to pay to go to prison. Do you think they want violence to stop? If you got a portfolio that has a for-profit prison there, you don't want Dr. Marshall stopping the violence, right? So violence is profitable for people. People make money off of violence. Now, as I say this, see where I start from with my clientele, the young people. But as people listen to me, they began to see that the young people are just mirroring what they see in a larger society, in a larger world. And so I'm on to something. Yes, so profitable. Let me give you another example in the world I live in. I live and work with kids, and they listen to a lot of hip hop, a lot of rap, right? Half the people, a lot of these artists that rap about guns and drugs and women and all that, they don't even do it. But that's what sells. And the industry is using what sells. So violence is hard to stop because people believe that it's natural, it's in man's nature, and it's necessary, and it's profitable. And we have a history of violence in the world. Men are basically, we are basically socialized to solve our problems through The word I'm looking for is violence. That's how we're socialized. We got a problem. That's how we solve it. It comes from the day when we're born. We go to school for the first time. And in an effort to steel us against the, what's going to happen not to school in the world. I remember my mother, when she sent me to school, she said, Junior, if he hits you, hit him back. He didn't say talk to the teacher. He didn't say call me. He said hit him back. So we learn early on through well-intentioned loved ones that you got a problem, handle it. Men are the worst, because men, that's how we really learn how to handle problems. It's through violence. So I see violence, I see these young people, they've just been pretty much taught by the world that violence is the way to do it. And I get into controversial things when I start doing this. What do you think is the number one risk factor? I talk like a doctor. When it comes to violence, the number one risk factor when it comes to violence. And I'm not just talking about kids, I'm talking about in the world. Although that's a part. That's part of it. The number one risk factor. All right, I'm going to set you up on this one. When I was a kid, I grew up in Los Angeles. They call it South Central. You've seen it in all the movies. Tough place to grow up. You grew up in Detroit. But I never went to a funeral of a peer when I was growing up. We had a lot of fights. In fact, some of the best friends I had came after the fight. Why do you think I never went to a funeral? None of the kids had guns.
Yes.
That's the only reason I'm not dead. None of us had guns. In fact, it was unmanly, if you can believe it there. If you couldn't fight, there was something wrong with you. When I started working with these kids, everybody had a gun. Everybody had a gun. They didn't have little guns. They had AK-47s, Uzis, 9mm assault weapons. That's the only reason I'm alive, is because we didn't have guns. I never went to a funeral. The kids I work with have been to 16 funerals in 16 years. So, now, this is when it gets tricky. See, this is when it's like, if you're going to have guns, you're going to have death. If you're going to have guns, you're going to have death. How do I know? Because we didn't have guns, we didn't have death. And I'm not saying, and I put it in a medical terminology because that's the only way I can. It's either about increasing the risk or decreasing the risk, right? So, guns are the biggest risk factor. Now, the pendulum has swung completely the other way now. Now, anybody can have a gun. That's the way the country's going now, right? Anybody can have a gun. They keep lowering the age. They're not even trying to do anything about guns. And that's okay. I'm not, fine. You don't want to do that? As long as you have guns. So we don't have a problem. America doesn't have a problem with knife violence. They don't have a problem with car violence. They don't have a problem with fist violence. They have a problem with gun violence. They've named it. They say gun violence. They have initiatives all about gun violence. So, all right. That's just a risk factor. I'm like a doctor. This isn't a Second Amendment thing. This isn't a, I like guns, you like guns. America loves guns, always love guns. Okay. I'm just saying it's a risk factor. It's harder now for me to do my job because now everybody's got a, that's right. So now what I really got to do work is the way you think. See, by the way, I just want you to know, I might be the only person that doesn't have a gun. So you don't have to worry about, you don't have to worry about me. And I always say that to people, I do the training, you don't have to worry about me, right? The kids can bring all their issues to when we meet, but what's the one thing they can't bring? They can't bring a gun. I can't do anything about that. You could bring whatever you're going through, your anger, your fear, your pain, but you can't bring a gun. I've stood at the door taking guns from people. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, this is my family. You can't come in and I don't want to be worried about what you might do to your the family members, because we're not a program, we're a family. So now I really got to work with how people think, because they have ready access to, the solution. The solution. And it's gone so far now, it used to be, well, let me find out what's going on. Now it's no, shoot first and find out later. So it's really tougher now, even now, than it was then, because their access to firearms is so easy. I did a gun buyback at my organization, and we paid $100 for a weapon and $200 for an assault weapon. And, I kind of knew who was going to bring the guns in. And this is funny. Actually, there was a guy out in line who was trying to buy the guns before I could get them.
Recycle.
He was going to buy them so he could. So, okay, that I was ready for. But then I had little old ladies from Pacific Heights bringing in guns. Everybody had a gun, and everybody had it for the same reason. For protection. The boys in the hood had it for protection. The ladies in the suburbs had it for the protection. Everybody has it for the same reason, for protection, or as I call it, the just-in-case thing. Right? Just in case. So now my job is really difficult, because now I got to worry about everybody. I went back to the Biden administration. No, this is when Obama was in office, and they had me back there talking about guns. And one of the theories was, okay, we're going to give the good guys the guns and keep the guns from the bad guys. And I said, how can you tell who the good guy is and the bad guy? And they said, I said, Bubba the good guy and Roosevelt the bad guy. I don't know who's the bad guy, right? So they scuttled that. So that's the biggest risk factor in violence. I tell people that. The other big one is probably material values over people. 3 of the biggest money-making operations in the world are arms trafficking, drugs trafficking, and human trafficking. And that's because they put money over people. I never wanted to sell drugs, because people come first. Money didn't come first for me. And I used to tell the kids, why would you sell drugs? Your ancestors were put in slavery for money, and you're selling drugs and hurting them again for, what's the difference between you and them? And they go, And they say, I never thought about it like that. That's the biggest thing I love when I talk. If somebody says, I never thought about it like that. What I'm condemning, I've become. So those are 2 of the biggest risk factors. There are others. But in the short time I got you, I just want to give you those 2. Guns and material values over people. Language is a risk factor, I've discovered. This is the worldwide risk factor. Negative view of women. The way women are seen in much of the world allows you to do it. There are societies that kill women, girl babies, because they're not boys. Automatically. They look at them, In Japan, the emperor can only be a male, can't be a female. So I started with my kids, but I've extracted this to the entire world. You want to know how I convinced a gang member not to retaliate on another gang member? You interested in that? Every gang member thinks that when one of theirs gets shot, then they got to go and retaliate. And each one thinks that when I do it, it'll be the end. They always do. If I just do this, it'll be over with. Well, what happened? And then they're surprised when it's not over with. So you go hit this gang member, and you're sitting back, and then they come back and hit the guy sitting next to you, and you start crying. And I tell them, well, that's your fault. Because you should have known when it was going to get them. Hatfields and McCoys is back to that. They're going to get you. And I remember talking to these gangs in L.A., telling them they always thought that they could kill the enemy. And all they did was create I'm about to stop, new enemy. Now, the reason I'm saying that is, in that microcosm, these gang members realize this is futile. I'm trying to do the impossible. How long has the Jews and Arabs been, because they think they can kill the, how long has the Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland been, they think they can kill the enemy? So, don't necessarily condemn these young people, because they're just acting out what they have seen on a larger world stage. In the world of superpowers, right now, right? So, I gotta stop. That's what I do. You got a glimpse of it. Thank you for listening. If you got any questions, I got like a couple minutes.
Yeah, we'll have questions.
Yes, sir.
Pass the mic around to Donald Reagan.
By the way, did what I said make sense? I just want to know if it makes sense. Yeah, that's if I don't make sense, you know, with kids especially, they're not going to listen to you.
So the question I have is these recent shootings, recent probably last 30 years, you see and walks in and recent shootings. It seems like young people are doing most of the shootings for all ages. It seems to be based, first of all, that are men or males.
Absolutely.
Which is one of the understanding. The question is, you've seen a lot more closely than we have. What is it that you think is a cause of all this new, I guess, fad in shooting and killing criminal people? What your take is from your experience.
So, like I said earlier, I think that we're socialized to deal with our problems with violence, okay? And there has been a loss of, and I think we could all agree, of sacredness. Now's the case, there are certain things you wouldn't do. Respect. You wouldn't mess with respect if you knew where you didn't mess with old people, you didn't mess with women, there's certain things you didn't do. I think as the society has just lost sacredness. Now for my kids, a lot of it happened when crack cocaine came and destroyed the family structure, and the fathers went to jail and the mothers were on drugs, so the kids didn't have anybody to raise them. One of the reasons I get over with kids is I'm going to be their family. My kids don't have fathers, and that's what I become. I become the father, and that helps restores the sacredness in them. Because when you don't feel love, and when you feel hurt, you're going to lash out. But I think as a society, the total society has a loss of sacredness that we just don't have. I mean, if you don't go to church, there's a lot of reasons, but that's what I think contributes to a lot of it. And restoring that sacredness is going to be hard to do, because I'm not going to get into what's going on, but you can see sacredness for our institutions, right? Our own political and democratic institutions. Yes.
Yeah, I got a question. You think that asking requiring insurance if you have a gun will help anything? For the Zoom.
Do I think that?
They're saying that now that you should have insurance if you have a gun.
Oh, liability. People think twice when you can be liable. People think twice. I don't know if it's gonna do it. I would think twice. Let me give you a parallel example. It's violence. You know what fraternal hazing violence is in school when people pledge organizations? It's gotten to the point now the hazers can be sued. Your own individual families can be sued. So people now, before your organization could be sued. So I think I personally think it would help. Yes. As long as you got, now see, really now I got, because there's so many guns, it's got to do something where people think about what they're doing. And maybe if in fact it's their own money, they might think about it.
I think, this is yeah.
Last night I saw a very inspirational talk by Henry Winkler, the Foz, and his basic premise, he was dyslexic.
Yeah.
And his parents told him that he was worthless, he was lazy, he would never amount to anything. And his basic premise was they didn't listen, they didn't motivate, they didn't value him as a person. Can you comment on how that fits into what you do?
That's just exactly what I do. I value them at, let me tell you how crazy it is. When the kids come, because so much can happen between the time I see them on Tuesday and when I see them the next Tuesday, when they walk in, you would think I'm the biggest cheerleader for kids ever. I'm hugging the kids, yelling at kids, I'm so happy to see you, happy. And they're like that. Because, yeah, you gotta value. There's not, our first rule, called Rules for Living, there's nothing more valuable than an individual's life.
That what?
There's nothing more valuable than an individual's life. That's number one. So absolutely, if you don't feel valued, hurt people, you're gonna hurt somebody else. So, I got into this business because families were in disarray. But the great thing is that these kids that came in families that were horrible are now husbands and fathers. It's just been incredible to see. So now I can just be second dad, not first dad. Absolutely, yeah.
This is not so much a question as more of a statement, so I apologize.
That's okay, sir.
I'm an avid gun owner. I do not have any paramilitary, and I've got a 1,200-pound safe to keep everything safe. And to me, that's your number one issue. But man, I see this as nothing but a special interest situation. You've got 70% of all gun owners and hunters in this nation who want to have laws on the books so that if you can't tote the line, you just can't have one. And you give a 21-year-old kid who has no military experience, or an 18-year-old kid, and they got mental problem. Who's going to go look for a gun like that at that age in the first place? It's going to be somebody that wants to use it. So, and that it's the special interest, and it gets back to, it's the economy. You have these politicians in the hip pockets. It's not a majority situation.
Money.
And it's all the money, and that is part of capitalism. Capitalism needs constraints like anything else. Middle of the road, one extreme or the other isn't the answer.
Anything that can be a strength can be a weakness if it tips to the other side.
Absolutely.
That's why, anything. If there's no other, anybody else, I just want to can I tell them one more thing? I'm proud of this. You may not know this. A group of people were just given a Congressional Gold Medal. Legislated by Congress and signed into law by Biden. And I'm saying this because most people don't know. In World War II, there was a group of black women called the 688 that was sent to England and to France to do an impossible job. And that was to get the mail out to the troops. They taught these women over there, and they put them in just dungeons, literally, with rats and everything else, and these sacks of mail, and they pick up a letter and they said, "To Johnny." Well, this group of women, it was an 855 women unit, did the job in 3 months rather than 6 months. Their motto was, "No mail, low morale." Then they went to France and did the same thing. And it was an unknown story. And I'm telling you this because this is one of those stories that come to light that, you didn't know about. It took years to come to light. And just last year, they were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. And they're waiting for their medals to be minted. There are 6 members of the 688 left. The baby is 99. The oldest one is 104. I don't know when these medals are going to be minted, but certainly they can get them. But I'm telling you this, because one of those women that 688 was my mother. And the dedication that she had, her and those women had to this country was just amazing. And so I'm going to repeat that story until it becomes known that the reason he got the medal in World War II was because of his dedicated women in the 688, one of whom was Odessa Taylor Marshall. my mother. So, and the joke is when she got home, she got another job, which was marrying my father and raising 9 kids. It was a hell of a lot harder than being in a war. Thank you. Thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.